Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Madison, and today I want to talk to you about my top 10 favorite books of 2024 and my top 10 least favorite books of 2024. So let's get right into it because I just want to yap about books while my baby is napping. So I'm going to start out with the best books that I read in 2024. The first book, and none of these are in any particular order, I just kind of looked through my Goodreads and went from there. The first book that I want to talk about is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. 5 stars for me. I 100% absolutely adored them. I didn't know if I was going to like this series because it's more of a high school drama type book. I don't really like connect with high school characters very much. I sometimes like them, but this one specifically was absolutely top tier. I would 100% recommend this series. I haven't read the second one yet. I want to start in 2025 getting some of these series off my list before I go ahead and start new ones. I have a habit of opening up books and just reading them and then mood reading the rest of my life. So going from a series to another series is kind of an issue that I have. But 2025, I want to read through the series that I already have, which you can see behind me is quite a few. I'm sure everybody has read this book or heard of this book, so I'm not even going to get into the details because it's one of those books that you have to read. The found family vibe, the romance, even though it's a high school romance, in my head, it didn't really feel like that. It felt more like a book about two grown adults, and I know they're not adults, they're high schoolers, but the next book that I want to talk about is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. Now, if you've seen any of my TikTok videos, you will know that this is one of my god tier books. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. It is very dark. It talks about some things that if you have any kind of like triggers or anything that requires you to look at the content warnings, I would do so before getting into this book. This is about Dean and Cora. Dean is Cora's sister's husband. She does not like him. She has no issues with their relationship, but she just, as a person, does not like Dean. She goes to her sister's birthday party and her wallet gets stolen and they get stranded at a bar. And she tried to leave and she couldn't leave because she didn't have her wallet. And Dean was the only one at 2 o'clock in the morning that answered the phone. So Dean came and picked her up. And after that is where you kind of you dive right into the dark parts of this book. Dean and Cora get in like an accident or something, and they end up in this man's basement, and it kind of goes off from there. They do actually. I'm not even gonna get into like the storyline or the plot behind this book because a lot of it you kind of just need to read, and it's one of those books that you should go in blind, but I would recommend looking at the content warnings for sure. The next book that I want to talk about is on a whole different side of genres. It is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I absolutely adored this book. I originally picked this up because my sister wanted to buddy read this with me, and she ended up having to move in the middle of everything, and I was supposed to stop reading it, but I got so addicted to it at the beginning that it was one of those books that I just could not put down. It is a historical fiction set in like Nazi Germany, France era. It's about two sisters who live completely different lives. One of the sisters wants to be a part of the resistance and wants to help the Americans get their soldiers so that they can continue to take over or take down the Germans. And the other sister is a single mom, well, kind of a single mom. Her husband's in the war, and she's trying to raise her daughter, and she ends up having to house these German soldiers, and one of them ends up being somebody she really likes, and one of them ends up being somebody that is not very nice to her, and some stuff happens with her on that end of things. If you are into if you haven't even picked up a historical fiction book, I feel like Kristen Hanna is one of those authors that you just absolutely could get into, and it's really easy to read, and it's not hard to like follow at all. And yes, it's a historical fiction, but it's almost like the plot of the main characters is more interesting than the history behind it, so you can kind of follow the families and like how they interact throughout the book. And yes, the history is there, but I feel like the history for this book was more of a subplot, and you kind of just followed the two main characters and see how they grow and what they do, and the history part of the book is just kind of the background, if that makes sense. That's how I interpreted it, but I've also not read very many historical fiction. On my TBR for 2025, I do want to read The Women. I've heard that's a really good book. I think it's about a nurse, and that's what I do for a living, and I absolutely love my job, so I want to see like the old-timey nursing stuff for that's talked about in that book. I want to say it's another army that one of the main characters is like a medic or a field nurse or something like that, but otherwise, next one that I want to talk about is a romantasy fantasy kind of book. It's how does it feel? How does it feel by Janine O'Reilly. And when I tell you, this opened up my love for fantasy books, and like not so much like the Throne of Glass, ACOTAR type of fantasy books because I've read those, but like the newer like contemporary fantasy, I guess is what you could call it. More like real world type. So it's about a biologist who goes into this town, and she's studying the like wildlife around the town, and she is looking for a specific mushroom, and that's why she goes to this specific little town. I don't know, I keep calling it a town, but that's why she goes to this town, and she ends up walking around in the forest and finds this mushroom, but they're like in a circle, and as soon as she bends over to pick it up, she kind of like falls through the circle. And on the other side of this, when she gets like back up, she's in this fairy world, and they think that she is the assassin that's sent to kill the king. And it just kind of goes from there. There's a huge plot twist at the end. I have the second one up here that I need to read so bad, but like I said, fell into the world of Throne of Glass again, so I am unable to read anything else at the moment. But it's just one of those books. It's short, it's really good. It's a little bit spicy, I would say. There's not very much like going on, but there is like the lust type of feeling when it comes to some of the characters. But it absolutely is a 10 out of 10, 5-star read for me. I 100% love it. You need to read it. I need to read the second one. I want to read it in a vlog because I just feel like there's going to be some emotions in this book. Because the ending for this first book for me was it was mind-blowing. It was one of those things where you just weren't expecting it, and then you just kept reading it, and like I flipped back and reread it a couple times because I didn't know if that's actually what I read. So one of my favorite books. The next two that I want to talk about are in the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage. It's Done and Dusted and Swift and Saddled. Both of those books by far are the best cowboy romance books that I have read so far. I have read the first few books in the Elsie Silver series, but I feel like there's just so much going on, and it's such a big series. Because this Rebel Blue Ranch series is new and the books are a little bit shorter, I feel like there was so much like action, not action, but so much plot like within such a short time. There was always something going on. The first book is about Emmy. I don't know why I couldn't think of her name, who was a very world-renowned barrel racer. That's a lot to say. And she has an accident which causes an injury, and she ends up coming back to the ranch and being a part of the family business again. But what her family doesn't know is that she can't get on a horse without having a panic attack. The mental health representation in this book was honestly not something I expected. It was very well thought out, and the ADD or ADHD representation, the panic attacks, the anxiety, like I haven't seen that represented in a book in a long time. And it's just with the cowboy romance side of things too, and the found family, and the fact that the brother's best friend wasn't really part of the family, but they accept him as part of the family. Like it's just the whole series. And me and my husband are watching Yellowstone, or have watched Yellowstone, and I feel like they were giving like Beth and Rip vibes too. So I really liked this book. And then the second one in the series is Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. The one brother buys, or not buys, the one brother is like gifted the deed to the old house that's on the farm, and he goes to he wants to remodel it so that it can turn into a guest ranch, I think. So like people that are learning or taking lessons and all of the ranch hands and stuff like that can go and live there, but it's a really run down. It's been empty for a lot of years. And so he hires Ada, who is the interior designer, but when I tell you the second book is much more spicy than the first one, but it's so good. And it's like a boss, I wouldn't say a boss employee type of relationship because it's not, but like it's sort of workplace romance, I would say. But oh my goodness, I could not put it down. I read it in 2 days. It is a really freaking good one. I have already ordered and will be receiving the third book in this series in like the next week or so, and I'm equally as excited to read that one as well. So the next book that I want to talk about is Where's Molly by H.D. Carlton, and when I tell you that is the best spin-off book that I have read so far, I think ever, off of the Cat and Mouse duet. I really liked Satan's Affair, but Where's Molly has taken the cake. It is about Molly and Cage. Molly is one of the one of the main characters who was introduced in Hunting Adeline when Adeline got abducted and was at Francesca's house, which was like the whorehouse type of thing. And she was the one who wrote the journal that Adeline found in the floorboards when she was there, and that kind of helped her get through and helped her explain how she got out. Um, so by far the best spin-off of a series that I have yet to read. I very much enjoyed it. It was too short in my opinion, but it was still a 5-star read for me. I absolutely adored it. If you haven't read it, you should read it. After Haunting and Hunting Adeline, I know both of those books are kind of controversial now. I know they were really popular like a year or so ago, but if you can stomach reading Hunting Adeline, read Where's Molly after it because it 100% is worth it, in my opinion. Just my opinion. The only thrillers that made it to this list was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I adored this book. It is about, what are their names? Brooke and Shane. Brooke is the nurse practitioner in the prison, and she recently gets the job there, and she doesn't realize that Shane, the other main character, is an inmate at the prison, and her testimony is what put Shane in the prison. So that whole situation is not not ideal, and the twist in this book is absolutely it's insane. I did not see it coming from a mile away. Frida McFadden, I've said in other videos, I have a love-hate relationship with her. One of her books is actually on my top 10 books that I did not enjoy this year, but we will talk about that in a little while. But I loved this book. I don't know if it was just the dynamic between the prisoner or the inmate and the nurse practitioner, like the medical side of things, but when I tell you, by far is one of my like favorite Frida McFadden books that I've read so far. I've only read a few that I've liked, which sucks, but the next book that I want to talk about is A Not So Meet Cute by Megan Quinn. It is a relationship of convenience. They meet in the funniest way I think I have ever read or even like heard of, even like books, celebrities, anything. They run into each other on the sidewalk because she walked through a rich neighborhood trying to find a rich man to pay her bills and to take to a date or a high school reunion so she could find someone to take to a high school reunion so she didn't look like a lonely single 35-year-old woman. And he went for a walk because he was looking for a reason or somebody to go with him to this business meeting because he told the guy that he's meeting for the other business guy that he was married and pregnant with a child because he was trying to like relate to this guy so that he would agree to this deal. And then it kind of just goes on from there. I It just is so funny. The other two books in the series follow the other two brothers. I haven't read those two yet. I am planning on reading them in my finishing my series video. So keep an eye on that. The next one that I want to talk about is the last one in my top 10 of 2024, and it is, where did it go? It is The City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. And this book, genuinely, I did not expect. It's like set in modern day, but there's witches and werewolves and demons and like the seven deadly sins, and it's just such a like supernatural type book, but it's set in the normal world. I don't know. She's a human. She grows up with witches, and they send her to this school, and the school is where she learns that all of these things are happening, and it's just so you can't even like explain this book. And there's a shadow daddy type of male main character. Darien Castle is a dark slayer, and it's just, I probably didn't make any sense trying to explain this book, but there's really no words that I can put into my mouth that would explain this book. It is so good. It's underrated. I haven't seen a lot of people reading about it or writing or talking about it, I mean, and you absolutely should go and read this series. I'm going to finish the series in 2025. Now I am going to flip to the not so good books that I read in 2024, and it's not that I didn't like these books, because if I don't like a book, I'll DNF it. I usually give it till about 20%, but these books I gave either a 3 stars or less, and I didn't really enjoy reading them, or I expected them to be something else and it wasn't. So it's not necessarily that I did not like these books. I still read them and I still was intrigued by them, but it either wasn't what I expected or I just didn't vibe with it and finished it because I wanted to know what happened, but I wasn't like obsessed over it, if that makes sense. The first two books that I want to talk about are the first two books in the Vicious Lost Boys series by Nikki Castle. No, sorry, Nikki St. Crow. I was expecting a Peter Pan type dark romance book. I was not expecting a why choose multiple male love interests, non-consent. It just wasn't for me. I don't know if it was because it wasn't what I was expecting or what. I listened to the audiobooks for these two also, which probably didn't help with how uncomfortable it made me, but regardless, I was not expecting what I read at all. And I did not and will not continue the series. The next one is The Teacher by Frida McFadden. If you've read The Teacher, you know. Well, let me put it this way. I read the blurb and I thought it would be like a Pretty Little Liars type of teacher student relationship where they don't get together until after said high school student gets graduated. And that is not the case for this book. It freaked me out because it was more like the teacher was infatuated by the high school student, which kind of gave me the creeps. And I I don't know. It just was, it gave me the creeps. I read it all the way through because I thought it would get better. It did not get better. The twist was predictable. I don't I don't know. This must have been one of Frida's like not very good moments because teacher student relationships to me is just kind of creepy. The next one, I enjoyed this book. I'm going to preface this with that. I enjoyed this book, but it was not what I expected it to be at all. The Coven by Harper L. Woods. I feel like there was a lot of plot holes. There was a lot of like subplots being opened up and they just weren't really talked about after that. And I don't know what I expected from that book, but I don't know if I expected what I read. It just, for me, was not, it didn't hit right. I do want to read the next book because I kind of want to see where it goes and if some of those plot holes were answered in the second book, and maybe I'm just making an assumption too quickly, but I feel like there shouldn't be as many subplots opened up if they're not going to be readdressed. So the next one kind of goes along the same lines of the teacher, why I didn't like it. It was Little Stranger by Lee Rivers. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it, but I shouldn't have to ignore the fact that it was a step sibling romance just to get through the book. I knew what I was reading and I knew what I was going into. It wasn't even step siblings, actually. It was foster siblings, right? Like you're gonna respond. Just nod your head. I I liked the plot, but if you took the foster sibling out of it, I feel like it'd be better. I don't It just was weird, and the fact that the female, or not the female, the mailman character didn't speak, but only to her, and was like the obsession with her. I don't know. It just freaked me out a little bit. It wasn't my cup of tea. And then the next one's funny. The next one I got on one of the Stuff Your Kindle Day events. It's called Pitch by Maggie Alabaster. And I thought it was about baseball. It's not about baseball. It is about a rock star person, or like a famous singer, who gets dropped by her record label and gets put onto another record label to join this band and to like open up for their concerts and stuff like that. But when she finds out she gets dropped from the record label, goes to a bar and has a one night stand with a guy, and she walks into her new job the next day, and the head singer of the band is the guy that she hooked up with. So it's not necessarily a bad book. I just put it on this list because I was not expecting it to be about a rock star type of environment. I thought it was going to be baseball, which it, to my surprise, was not about baseball. And then Wretched by Emily McIntyre. I very much enjoy the Never After series. This one did not hit for me. I don't know why, and I couldn't even really tell you what this book is about anymore because I read it like back in January. But I do know that it was a 3-star read for me. It wasn't. See, I know they're not Disney retellings. I understand that. But for me, this one, just using the characters' names, it really didn't like vibe with the Disney story that it was like even loosely based off of. Like how Scarred was Lion King with those characters. Like you could still kind of picture that this would have happened if it was like the dark version of Lion King, if that makes sense. And even Hooked, like in the main story, or in the original story, Captain Hook is bad still. And in this one, I couldn't get into it. I don't know what it was. I am going to read the next couple books in the series because I bought Hexed. It's over here somewhere, I think. Right there. I bought Hexed because I'm super excited for the Little Mermaid version of like her mind, like her I really like Emily McIntyre and how her brain works when it comes to like the loose Disney like fractured retellings is the best way to call it. But then the next one was another like thriller-ish whodunit type of book, and Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I don't know if I just don't like her writing or what, but it wasn't intriguing to me. I read this when I was at the car dealership waiting on my car to be done, and I finished it. I gave it like 3.5 stars, but the twist in the end of the book was not something that I saw coming, but it also did make sense to the story. Like the whole story was just kind of like back and forth. It was about these siblings who are going through this person's or their parents' house that the parent passed away, and they find all of these like hints to like someone in the family being a murderer or something, and it really, I didn't really like it. It wasn't a bad book, but the story was kind of meh. The next one was Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. I don't know what I thought a book about two serial killers was going to be about, but this was not it. I read the Mindfuck series, and that did it better than Butcher and Blackbird. I just don't think I very much enjoyed like the gory spicy scenes. Like those freaked me out. The comparisons of food items to other items kind of threw me off. The concept of the story was a good good concept, but I just think it could be done differently and it would be really good. And then the next one and the last one is A Fallen Star by A.M. Kusi, I think is how you say it. I don't remember what this book is about. All I remember is the mental health representation. The female main character, just thinks that she spends the entire time trying to fix the male character. Like, that's it. It's like 300 pages of her just trying to fix him. And personally, it's advertised as a romance novel. There's no romance. All she's trying to do the entire time is fix him. You can't spend a whole book trying to fix somebody. There needs to be something else. Like, I need plot and like something. And I think she knew him from before, and I don't know. I don't really know what that whole entire like plot in itself was about, but it's just that it wasn't a good book. I got it on one of the Stuff Your Kindle Day events, and it was one that was like suggested in some videos that I was like researching which books that I should get because they were free. And I don't know, it's just not something that I was expecting. So, to wrap up this video, those were the top 10 books of 2024 and my least favorite 10 books of 2024 for me. I am going to be kind of making a video talking about what I want to read in 2025 and some of the upcoming releases that I am very excited for, Onyx Storm being one of them. I don't know. I was kind of scared at first of starting this YouTube channel and kind of being a little bit nervous. I need somewhere to yap about books, and I think I'm going to turn TikTok, or not TikTok, turn YouTube into my platform of choice if TikTok actually does go down. But for right now, I am going to attempt to keep my YouTube going and filming videos and stuff like that. So you should be seeing more of me here soon. But thank you for watching. If you could like, subscribe, and comment something, comment a book that you are excited to read in 2025.